Yep, this is gonna work. So let's do it. Windy again on this trail. Woo. Might have to overshoot some of these this time.
Here we go, Chad. Oh.
Oh yes. Can't believe I just did that. Hello, welcome to my channel. I've always wanted to kind of talk through the steps of how you go off a jump, and what you do with your body and so on and so forth. And I just figured out after looking at this video of me riding my fat bike last week that I can actually literally do it right here on the computer and talk to you while I'm doing it. So I think this will be a great how-to for those of you that are looking at how to launch off of jumps and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and get to it. So here we go, and I'm just gonna grab this time bar with my mouse and drag myself across the screen and over the jump, and then my landing. So on this particular jump, because we're in snow, I wasn't able to get enough speed. I really tried to clear it because the downside of this jump is literally starting right where my front wheel is coming down. So I'll talk a little bit about that also, on what you can do when you know you're not gonna quite make the jump. But as you can see, I got pretty good air. I just didn't have enough speed to make it to the landing. And you can see how I compressed down really hard to kind of take that extra hard landing. But let's go back to here and what is going on, okay? So I'll back myself up. And one of the more important things about jumping is doing this compression. So as you're approaching the transition of the jump, and so if you follow my mouse or my cursor right here, this is the transition in this case, because this is pretty much a straight board. So I consider this kind of area the transition. So I'm going to compress through this transition, and you can see, watch my body, how I lower myself down right there, right? And then I come through that transition. So, excuse me, but right here is when I start to spring up. Right here, you can see I'm looking actually, this is another important thing. I'm looking actually down here. So I kind of have a target of what I'm aiming for. And so if you look, this is where I start to spring up. Boom. And you can actually see that there is kind of a little bit of a transition here, maybe because of the snow or because the log sticks up above the board a little bit. So that's nice because it allows me to get some good pop. So then if you watch, I spring up, boing. That right there is the most important part of jumping. Notice where my front wheel is. What I actually see a lot of riders do, and I'm going to use my finger because you can see it better, is when you see them in this position, their front wheel is already dropping, and that scares me every time I see a rider do it, because they're not pulling up on the bars, they're not springing up, they're just riding off the jump. And so what's going to happen in that case is, because they're not springing the bike up, as the bike comes off, front wheel starts to drop, and that back wheel is going to get kicked by this little bit of a lip and then you see them go, and sometimes over the bars, or they land front wheel heavy, and it's really scary. So if you're going to jump, you absolutely need to understand this principle that I'm showing you right here. Because if you just ride off and you're not actually taking control of the bike at this point, the bike's going to go and flip you right over the bars. And those kinds of crashes are the worst because you can land on your head. If you put your arms out, you can hurt your wrists, you can break a collarbone, all kinds of really bad stuff can happen. So it's really important to get the concept of how you launch off the lift of a jump. So let's talk about what happens after this. So here we are in this position. If we go back, crouch, come up, and then I just literally spring up with my body. Boom. Now you can actually see the bike going up. The front wheel isn't diving down. It's everything's in motion and it's going up into the air. And you will actually see here in a couple more frames that how you can tell things are going up. Obviously you can see it as I'm moving the cursor here. You see both the front wheel is going up and the back wheel is going up. Now you see the front wheel kind of stabilize and the back wheel is still going up. So look at my body here. I actually pull the bike up into my body when I'm in this position. And if you draw a line from here, it's lower than where the bike is. So you actually can see that I actually created enough energy to go higher than what this would just send you if you just rolled off of it. So that's key. So after I go off, and we'll back me up here a little bit and talk about it. So right about here, I spring up. Now you can see my knees bend slightly right there. And I start to pull the bike up into my body. Right there, peak height. Then things start to come down. You see right here. So now let's talk about the fact that at this point, I now realize, I started to angle the bike to make the landing, and I now realize, oh, I'm not going to make that downside because I'm looking here and realizing I don't have enough speed or momentum to make the downside. Another really important thing, so you'll see that I actually do not dive the bike very much. I land a little front wheel heavy. Actually, now looking at it, to be honest, it looks like my front wheel just barely made the downside a little bit. It's my back wheel that came up short. I guess I didn't realize that until now, but then you see me come down, but it's a hard landing. You can see, watch how much I compress on the landing. So that's the other part of jumping, is you want to have soft knees and arms. If you're stiff and you have your arms and legs locked when you land, that's gonna really hurt and actually can cause you to crash. But I'm gonna compress this landing, and there is no suspension on this bike, although it is a fat bike. It's got softer tires, and I am in the snow, so it's not as hard of a landing as it would have been otherwise. But I compress the landing and ride out of it. So we'll just kind of go through these steps in a quicker succession. Come through, compress right here. And that's kind of, I sometimes call that pumping, compressing, and getting ready to launch the transition. And spring up, boom. And look how the bike is going upwards off the launch. And then I come down and land. Now, had I made the downside, which would have means that I would have had to get to here, I would have probably pushed the front end down more, and my impact, which you see right here, wouldn't have been as harsh. But I didn't make the downside, and so I had to compress it with my body and let it roll out. If you're jumping a double and you're not going to make it and you're right here, that's when you push the back end down. So you actually would want to push the back wheel down and keep the front wheel up and just literally case the front side of the double and at least try to get your front wheel to go over. You definitely don't want to nosedive going into the landing of a double, because if your front wheel hits first, it's going to flip you over. You want to angle the bike this way, and you can do that by pressing your legs down and pulling up with your arms and make the bike go this way. But this is a tabletop, so it's not a big deal that I just kind of keep the bike level and land. So I hope that helps some of you with jumping, and it's all in the takeoff. And whatever you do, don't just ride off of jumps expecting good results. If you're not doing this little spring up action, you are not going to have a good experience. So that action right there, super important. And so I encourage you to start with stuff that's even smaller than this. This isn't too bad, but then you could always approach it at slower speed and then just jump and plan to land right here, like literally a foot or 2 feet, and get the feel of how you should launch and control the bike. When you're first jumping, one of the other big mistakes that I see people make is they just go super fast at it, thinking, I got to clear this thing. Well, that's the last thing you want to do. You want to find yourself a tabletop, and you want to go slower and then learn how to spring off and land right here. If you go super fast and you don't get that spring or that pop correctly, you're going to go poop, the back wheel is going to get kicked up, and you're going to go right over the bars. Don't do that. Start out slow, use a tabletop, learn how to pop and land, and then go a little bit faster, land here, a little bit faster, and you should be landing both wheels at the same time. You should be popping off the jump. If the jump is like sending you funny, then you know you need to slow down and learn that first initial step. So I hope that helps you. I just kind of came up with this idea as I was looking at this and thinking this is a great way to go through those little fine details of how to go off a jump. So I hope you like my channel. Please subscribe.